go right up to the heaven. Needs to be on this side. That's all right. I'll just keep it coming.
Rightio. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and great to have a few people here tonight. Can everyone hear me at some stage and nod? Nice. So I'm not going to use any mics. We just want to keep it a little bit more intimate than that. My name's Greg Collier. Great to be here, and I'll introduce our guests in a second. A little bit about Hub Chats. This is number 4, I think, that we're up to, and the purpose of Hub Chats, similar to what you've seen with TED Talks, if you're familiar with that, is that we just get together for an hour every now and then and have a bit of a discussion with different people. And the purpose is not to sell you anything, not to convince you of anything. It's just to come together as a community and to talk about stuff that our guests think are important, and to share their opinions about things. And you get to take that for what it is, and we move on. It's just a different way to be informed about what's happening in the community, and what some of our community members are thinking about in different capacities that they fill. So as an example, my name's Greg Collier. I'm lucky enough to be the president of the Drysdale Football Club. We're sitting 9th, but bear with us. And we provide sporting facilities in town for around about 500 players we've got this year, which is a great resource. And 130 years ago, when we played our first game of football in Drysdale, we had one oval. We've still got one oval. So I'm not sure how that works, but and I'm a dad. I've got 4 kids, and I had a foster daughter, and she's got a child, so I'm an apprentice grandfather. And I run my own business. I'm a management consultant, and I do most of my work outside of the Bellarine, and I'm off to Melbourne tomorrow, and then off to Tassie tomorrow night, talking with different businesses about what they do and how they do it. But tonight I have some great pleasure to be joined on the couch by 3 very successful women in their own right. Can I please introduce to you Sarah Valentine? A little bit about Sarah. Sarah is a National Silver Award winner from the Australian Centre for Leadership for Women. And she works with business owners all over Australia to move from survival mode to reconnecting with why they're in business, and holds them accountable to achieving the goals that they desire. Sounds pretty good. Excellent. There you go. You didn't write that, or someone wrote it. And Sarah Carroll. Sarah's known as the ukulele queen of the Bellarine, and I noticed that she's got a ukulele case down there. Reading up about Sarah, a domesticated folk, pop, acid, country, rock and roll performer and songwriter. Sarah's released 3 albums. Does that sound right?
I've actually released about 15 or 16,
Nice.
but I'm working on number 4 of my own.
Of your own.
Just
So
mine.
3 albums in your own right. And your 3rd release, Home and Heart, illustrates diverse interests including living here on the Bellarine, home life with pets, kids and friends, and many years in the business. A collaborator with many artists including the band The Dunes and the Psychedelic Wildmen. Sarah was the inaugural recipient of the Ross Lipson Award at the Queenscliff Music Festival in 2014 for excellence in music and helping others reach their musical goals. It's pretty excellent, isn't it?
It was excellent.
Nice. And Carol McCarthy. Carol is the agency owner of Hello World here in Drysdale, and has been working in the Geelong region for 30 years. You must have started when you were about 4. And has owned Hello World Drysdale for the past 16 years. Carol is our adventure expert at Hello World and loves planning group trips to exotic locations including Africa, the Galapagos, Sri Lanka, India and Peru. She was nominated for the 2014 as the Best Travel Agency Manager Retail at the National Travel Industry Awards. How did you go?
I didn't get it.
Didn't get it.
Nominated.
I did win Travel Agency of the Year a
Wow.
couple of years before that. So,
Excellent.
but that's an agency.
And it's always being nominated is a big thing as well, isn't it? So
That's
excellent. And so we haven't really got any format to what we want to talk about, and we'll take some questions from the floor at some stage. But I might start us off by asking Sarah a question about you created the Bellarine Business Women
Yes,
in 2011.
that's right.
Could you tell us a little bit about why you created that and how it's going and what the
Sure.
purpose is?
Yeah, so back in 2011 I was looking for networking places on the Bellarine, and there was nothing that I could find that brought the whole Bellarine together. there's a lot of business associations in each town, but I was new to the area, relatively new. I'd only been here a couple of years, and I just viewed the Bellarine as the Bellarine, not Ocean Grove, Drysdale, etc. So I just saw a gap there. So I thought, well, I'll see what happens by creating an event for women in business. And the first event back in 2011, 50 women turned up. So I thought that maybe there was an opportunity to start something because there was a thirst for it. And since then we've had events practically every single month. We have had lunches and, what else have we done? Kylie's there in the audience that works with me.
For the workshops.
We've done workshops. We have an extended arm of the networking, which is business development for women in business. There really isn't a lot on the Bellarine. There's certainly plenty in Geelong, but not on the Bellarine. And a lot of the women in business that I've found are mums and are very busy. And so the travel time, as much as it's not that far, it's very convenient for them to just be down the road to come and learn business tools.
And it's interesting then, that, so Geelong has the chamber and it's about 100 RTOs and a university in Geelong as well, and the Gordon and things like that for some support. But what do you notice is the difference between Geelong and the Bellarine? Why the Bellarine in terms of a focus?
For me starting this?
Yeah.
Well, at the time, my children were still quite young, and Geelong wasn't an option for me. It was only a few years ago, but at that time one was still preschool. So it was also for me to get to know a lot of people locally. We'd chosen to live in the Bellarine, not Geelong, and I'm not from the area at all. I'm from Melbourne, so I thought I'd rather get to know locals, which I've done over the years. It's been fantastic. So that's why the Bellarine was the focus, and it meant that a lot of the businesses rely on Bellarine, not so much Geelong. So it was about them being able to connect and network with people from that area as opposed to Geelong.
Nice, and the focus of this, of course, is around the Bellarine because this is our home and where we live. And why did you move to the Bellarine?
Because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
There's beaches and wineries, and I do like a winery.
Yeah,
it's just beautiful.
Yeah.
My husband's from Bendigo, I'm from Melbourne, and I grew up many summers in my teenage years going to Barwon Heads, and he spent his first 17 years at the Ocean Grove Caravan Park, Riverview, surfing every day. He's a commercial diver, loves the water. So when we moved to Darwin for a couple of years from Melbourne, and having been there, decided that we did not want to live back in the city, and we could choose. He was working offshore as a commercial diver, and I was determining what I was going to do after having the kids, so we could live anywhere. So we were given a really lovely choice of anywhere in the country, as long as he could get to an airport at that time.
Yeah.
So we chose the Bellarine.
It's a bit safer diving here than Darwin as well.
Yeah, he did a lot of diving up there too. Yeah.
Fewer crocs as well, which is good. Nice. And Sarah, what about for you? So how long have you been in Drysdale or the Bellarine, and what brought you here?
Well, we've been here, I think, 16 years. I think this is our 16th year. And my husband and I are from Melbourne, and we had two little boys, and I grew up in St Kilda in Melbourne, so I wanted my kids to have that same beachy childhood. I wanted them to just, always have sand on them and just grow up being able to go swimming every day and have those lovely memories of that, like I do about my childhood. I never spent any time down here really at all prior to deciding to leave Melbourne, but my husband used to do that same thing of coming down to Barwon Heads and Ocean Grove and just spending whole summers camping and living on fish and chips and
Probably know
surfing.
each other.
Yeah, I really do. And so I wanted to kind of bring him back to that place as well. So I just started driving down here on weekends and having a look around, and we originally moved into a rental place in Ocean Grove, which was the same rent as we were paying in Thornbury in Melbourne for a house that was like 4 times the size, 5 minutes from the beach, new, all the doors actually shut, there weren't any holes in the floor, nothing, and central heating and a fire. I mean, I couldn't believe the luxury of it, it was incredible. And I thought, how great. And then the real estate boom happened So we couldn't continue to live in Ocean Grove, but then I saw the ad for the house in Clifton Springs in the real estate agent. It was such a funny picture. It was like, it's got a sunroom in it, our house, which at the time that we bought it was decked out for we're convinced that they were swingers, the couple that sold the house to us, because the house had a jacuzzi, a quite large jacuzzi, and all these sort of palm trees and sort of secluded gardens and stuff, and there was a bar and, you know, it was fitted out for a couple with no children, you know, basically, and who like to, you know, experiment maybe a little. That's our theory anyway. So, but it was such a great place, and it was like going for nothing. And I said to the estate agent, Lynn Butters, some of you probably know her, or Patty Butters at the time, why is the house so cheap? And she said, oh, it's because it's in Clifton Springs and nobody wants to live there. And I said, well, that's crazy. It's only 10 minutes up the road. So, we pounced on it and have never been sorry for 1 second. Yeah, it's been a great move down, and we've loved living here. Yeah.
Nice. Well, the secret's out since.
That's it. Yeah. Talked to
Yeah.
too many people about the Dell and stuff, and everyone's going, oh, the Dell, and wanting to know about it. You know.
Haven't heard about your jacuzzi yet, so that was
All covered and drained.
nice. And Carol, what about for you? What's been your journey to here?
Oh, well, I grew up in Brisbane and then married a shearer from Geelong, so I moved to Geelong and lived there for ages. And then we wanted to move out of a suburban block and move on to a bit of some acres. Glenn's, he loves the bush and he has lots of bird aviaries. So I wanted to open a business as well, like with a travel agency. So we sort of drove around looking for somewhere I could have my own business and live in the area. I wanted to be part of the community and work and live in the same area. And Drysdale was needing us, I think. We needed a travel agency, and we found a beautiful place on Wickham's Road with a couple of acres, and it was just, and we could afford it. And back then, in 1998, when we bought, so we were lucky we bought when things weren't so expensive, where now we could never afford to come into the market the way it is now. And so we've been here since 98 and opened the agency. So remember when we first opened the agency, it was just me on a little second-hand desk, one computer. I had 2 desks actually, so it looked like there was more than just me sometimes, but there wasn't. And then I had a local lady come in doing work experience with me who was a hairdresser, and she just did never leave. And so she stayed with me for years, even, you know, then I had to start paying her. And then I started putting on staff, and so now, you know, we've grown each year, and now we've got 7 offices in there, and we're doing really well. And we've had to move shops because that little shop we grew out of. And it's a great place to live as well, great neighbourhood. Our neighbours, all our blocks have got fences and gates in between. I mean, fences, obviously fences, but gates between them, so we all just come and go between all the land and the area. So it's a good place to be.
Nice. And so very different pathways to be here, and interesting histories then about what you bring to town or to the community. And I'm wondering then about, if we shift focus to the present, about what you see as some of the challenges, or how you're bringing your skills to life in what you do living here. I'm happy to take comment from any one of you.
I think I served on the Bellarine Tourism Board for a little while, and then while it was on the interim with the Geelong Bellarine Tourism Board, and I think it's not a challenge. I actually think it's fantastic now for the Bellarine, because we've now got our name out there, and people are now, I've noticed, particularly friends and that in Melbourne, know the Bellarine, as opposed to, you know, Ocean Grove or Queenscliff, Point Lunny type thing. They actually know it as a region now. And when I first came here in 2009, people had no idea when I'd referenced the Bellarine. So I've noticed that to be a significant change, and I think that's only going to do more favours for the region, and with the things that are going on around with the tourism and, you know, the wineries and all the things that are popping up around town and the festivals. I think it's really placing, you know, the Bellarine as such on the map now.
And what's the impact of that on your business around you know, giving specifically women skills around what they do in running businesses and women in business? What are you seeing as trends, say in a Bellarine context, as distinct from the other work you do around Australia?
Yeah, it would depend on their business. Certainly a lot of the members of Bellarine business women are impacted by tourism, without a doubt. So that, from the point of view of business development and marketing, they can get really geared up for those busy times, because there are times where it's not so busy, and they've got to survive through certain months of the year. So I think that definitely has helped. I think also with Bellarine Businesswomen, it allows the women to come to a place where they can actually share their own challenges with each other and find that they've actually got really similar challenges. So friendships have formed where business might not have been done, but collaboration has been done, and also support outside of the room, outside of the event, where they can call each other up and have a coffee or whatever to talk about what might be going on for them. And they would never have met beforehand had there not been a place for that.
So it sounds like it's really created a sense of community that creates connections that then helps people build what they're
I think so. Carol's a member, so maybe she can answer that as a member of
It
it.
is amazing. I was so surprised. And there's so many diverse little businesses on the Bellarine, and you have no idea what's out there, but there's some really interesting women there. And it's very nurturing, and the women are really supportive of each other there. I love it. It's great. Yeah. And the training, I think, is good, because a lot of them are small businesses that don't have the opportunity to go to a lot of training courses and things, and Sarah puts some really, I suppose, what's the word I'm looking for? Practical courses together. Been to a couple of my staff have been to a couple as well. They're great.
Good.
It's caring.
It's caring.
Women are good. Women together. It's very powerful.
Yeah. And Sarah, for you, I know you had 20 years in community radio as an example, and so I guess on community radio you get a chance to commentate on things that are happening, and what do you notice happening around the Bellarine?
Well, I think there's, as there always will be anywhere, great things and not so great things. I'm very pro the preservation of green spaces, and I'm an environmentalist. I'm also very interested in social justice, and so I always have an ear to news on those fronts, I guess. So I do listen to the Pulse in Geelong a lot to find out what's going on, and I also like to read the local papers, because I think that you have to read the local papers to get the good news stories, otherwise you would never hear about them. Because if you read the big papers, the city papers, it's just depressing, because of the way that they are run as businesses. Speaking of businesses, the focus is on, sensationalism, whipping people up into various kinds of frenzy over this issue and that one, and not actually communicating much of value. So I think that the local press and the small and the community radio stations that I've been involved with over time, including the Pulse, are vital sources of information about, that will inform us as to, things that we might want to be involved in. And for me, I hear about things like the Geelong Star, there's actions about that I've been involved in because I heard about them on the radio or, social media and that sort of thing. I think that, you have to be careful as to how much you get involved in. I find myself sometimes becoming a bit overwhelmed by the amount of information that I've sort of welcomed into my life about various issues. And sometimes I just have to go, I can't actually read about that at the moment, so I'll just, because I've got to focus on this one thing that I'm involved in, or, I think that, women and men will often, if you have a lively conscience or a curious mind, you will tend to possibly take on a little bit more than you can manage, and you have to remember sometimes just to put things back and just look at and deal with what's immediately important and immediately in front of you, and that might be your partner, your children, your close friends, the people that are sort of circulating through your immediate life. So I guess I spend a lot of time sort of either out in the world kind of agitating and doing stuff, and then going, all right, go away everyone, and I'm just going to cook tea now. So, and I find that sort of thing really nurturing. Like, I love coming home after, busy days or just, out on the kind of tear, and doing something really small and concentrated and quiet, even if it's, sit and play the instrument for a while, or just, reconnect with home, in that little, so that's my sort of personal challenge, I guess, about, what I'm involved in around the area, around what's going on in my life in this area.
Nice. And I guess as a musician, then you're a natural collaborator as well.
Mm-hmm.
And look through your bio and the collaborations musically that you've done with all sorts of people on all those albums and festivals and tours that you've made is really fascinating stuff. And so then I wonder about that natural sense to reach out and connect with others and the skills and talents they have. Could you kind of contrast that to us, or connect those two things for us about your role in the Bellarine and the role you've played as a collaborator through your art?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, I'm a natural connector. I reach out to people and very intuitively and instinctively, and that's a great gift. I'm really fortunate to have that. I was brought up to be like that, and very social, gregarious parents and household and everything, and so it comes really naturally to me. So whatever position I find myself in, whether it's running a class or performing at a show or working in a studio or anywhere, I will try to find points of contact, things in common, stuff that we can talk about, understanding, straight away. So I'm learning to manage feelings of frustration and anger that I might have about things that maybe I can't change, or things that I feel are wrong or unjust, and trying to sort of bring those abilities to communicate and understand other people's point of view more as I get older. I hope I'm getting better at that, and I work on that, because I think that it's most effective, really. If you want to change something or improve or anything, you have to try to, you've got to deal respectfully with others, and so I'm trying to learn to do that better. Yeah, music can be very rough and tumble, and it's a very sort of sweary, colloquial, casual sort of thing, and so the language that we speak between ourselves as musicians is very different to the language that I would speak out in the wider world, but there are things in common in terms of, how you relate to others and how you get the best result quickly, because sometimes in a collaboration with musicians, you don't have much time. We might have an afternoon to get a song together, or, we might have a really short period of time, so you have to sort of work out how you can do that quickly and most efficiently and make everybody happier,
Yeah, nice.
So that's sort of, that's a social skill, I think, too.
And one of the things I love about music is that sense of collaboration when you come together and then a rhythm starts, and then people swing and move into the same rhythm, and you can jam together, and great things come out of that, and a sense of belonging. And I wondered then with the connection with business about these women coming together and then getting into that same rhythm and harmonising across the Bellarine.
Absolutely.
Giving that some voice. Can you build some connections with that for us?
Oh, absolutely. There's been an enormous amount of that type of activity go on as a result of Bellarine businesswomen. And as I alluded to before, women who have met that would not have ordinarily met, because one might be in Port Arlington, the other in Ocean Grove in their own businesses. This is an opportunity to meet and collaborate on various levels. I'm trying to think off the top of my head a good example, but I know one remedial therapist, for example, had to close or downsize, and through Bellarine businesswomen was able to take her business to that other premises and not be sort of out on the street, so to speak. She could continue to run a business within another business and not lose it completely. There's been, I know, work with sort of, the bookkeepers, with the accountants, and then with the business owners as well. We've had local women come and talk about, so Lindsay Sharp, I don't know if you know, from Jack Rabbit and Flying Brick and Lura Park, she's come and spoken and shared her experience, so that, I guess women at any level of business can see that anything's possible, and there's always challenges, and it might look like something on the outside, but that's not always what it is on the inside. So those experiences are shared, and we actually had a guest speaker a couple of months ago, and a lady came up to me, a new member came up to me and said, I would never have approached that woman outside of this room because she, you know, is corporate and looked like she was super, super successful, and I just would feel so intimidated. But she had this long conversation, and we were following up afterwards with further conversation. So it I guess breaks down the connection there, breaks down any, I guess, perception of status.
And one of the, I grew up in the country, and I still consider myself a country kid with grey hair. The interesting thing about people coming into country towns is often they describe country as being cliquey, and that there is this barrier to get into town that takes 50 years to be even earn the right to consider yourself half a local. And so I guess one of the great things about living in a community like the Bellarine is the connection and the community that you have, but then the challenges is that you, through hearing your history, sounds like you found it easy to come in and make connections. It was a natural part of you. But I think there's a lot of people moving into small communities like ours that find it challenging, and that, you know, where do they go?
We have them coming to us as well. You know, we're new to the area, and it's funny that then they like to do the small group trips that we're doing, and then they meet friends on those, and suddenly they're friends for life, and they start travelling together. Or women, mainly women, are looking for someone to travel with. So then we can match people up. We do a lot of that, you know, getting together, people having a coffee together and see if they want to go on holidays together. Just give them their name and number, and it's a lovely thing you can do. You know? And then they do have someone to travel with, and we just had one today actually, coming to Africa with us next year. You have two women who, it's expensive to travel on your own, but then they can share the cost of the room and come away and have the security of travelling with a group. And we find that a lot here. And I think with it is connecting the whole community. You're connecting people, we're connecting people, you're connecting people with the music. I think the Bellarine is just a great place to do that.
I like the irony that you're going travelling 10,000 kilometres to connect with a local.
Even when they come home from holidays, they can share that forever because they catch up all the time, or they run into each other at Safeway, and you know it's just part of it. Then it's lovely. Instead of just meeting someone overseas, you never see them again. They've built a whole little group of friends that they're travelling around with.
And there's a great saying, a cliche, that, you know, there's no place like home. You connect with a lot of people that pay you money to leave town and then to come back.
I'm the opposite. Everyone's trying to get business in. I'm trying to take them out.
Take them out. But what do people say when they come home after they've reflected on a trip to Peru or to Africa? Or what do they say about living here?
How clean it is.
Yeah.
How clean, how safe, how calm, how cold. No, it's usually how cold, especially this time of year when people are coming back. What else would they? Clean, safe, calm, cold. That's probably the main things they talk about.
Yeah, because it's interesting that a great perspective that you have with travelling is just how good it is to be home, and that sense that it's a nice place to come.
It is a nice place
home
to come
to. Yeah. Interesting. Let's hear from the people in the audience. Yes. Let's hear from some people in the audience about what questions you might have.
I think we're so unknown here. I don't think people realise how good Lake Lorne is and the Clouds waterholes are, and that we have the freckled duck at Lake Lorne. How many people don't know about the Dell? A lot of people, I think, in our area don't know what we've got here. They don't know how lucky we are to have it.
And also about some of the
petrol station coming up. That's positive, isn't it?
Yeah. So you've got new resources around coming into town, and there's new supermarkets being built, and I contrast that to Sarah's example as well about, you know, protecting. It's nice that it's green at the moment. There was a while there the region was very dry.
Yeah, it's nice and green. But it's a worry what's happening because we're losing our green. I'm worried about the gap between Drysdale and Geelong. How long will it last?
Getting closer. So
blocks of land everywhere.
it'd be good to get some dialogue then happening about how do you maintain that challenge about you know, you spoke about a few years since you moved to town, and 16 for you and 16 for you, and I'm about 10, and I guess back in that time it was easy to move into, and and it's a great place to live, and we love it, and we connect with people, and but it seems a bit early to put up the "We're full" sign. So, how do you accommodate the needs of a growing community that have a need for some of the work that Tom does with his committee for Bellarine about the infrastructure development that needs to happen, the ring road that's about to start. There is a new petrol station, there's new supermarkets going into town, there's new shops going to be open. But you also have a need to protect some of the local wildlife and to create an environment where kids can go and play and get sand all over them.
It needs planning. I think Drysdale looks like it hasn't really been planned. You don't have a main street as such, and when I was driving home tonight and I saw that Safeway on the hill, why would you put a Safeway on a hill? You know, that's this big eyesore of a building looking over the bay.
Yeah.
There doesn't even seem to be any planning to think, what would make this place look better, what would be better.
It doesn't even seem to have any windows that face.
No, why would,
That
yes.
doesn't.
At least they could put the tea room there, so the staff could sit and look over the bay, but it's just this monstrosity sitting there.
Yeah, well, they're kind of generic buildings, aren't they?
They
Those they're
are.
not.
They rang me up about
Yeah,
going in there, and
yeah.
why would I go there? No one's going to shop there.
We'll see. I don't doubt for a second. I mean, I think, if it's a place where people can easily walk to and it becomes a community hub, it won't be all bad, but, anywhere that sort of gets people, that's what I hope anyway, at the very least that it will be somewhere where people cannot drive, because it's within Kiwi of their place. Everybody will know where it is, of course, because it's like, beacon that you're talking about. So, yes, at the very least, I would hope that it will be a place where people will leave the car at home and walk and perhaps, hook up on the street and have a chat and, get out of the, either in your house or your car or the workplace mode that a lot of people seem to be, that's the greatest sin, I think, of planning failure in our area, but all around Australia, really, is that we're just such slaves to the car, and you look at the traffic that's lined up along the road in the mornings, and it's sort of one person, and it's madness to me. I'm thinking of starting a carpooling group. I'm already carpooling with a neighbour to get the kids to school in the morning, and I think carpooling is a great thing to do, so I was thinking about that. I think really the solution lies in, Tom and I have talked about this, and lots of other people I'm sure agree that the best way forward is just for as many people as possible to talk about it and make sure that they're heard. And wouldn't you agree with that? That the consultation and discussion needs to occur between as many of us as possible to try to avoid things being foisted upon us that we don't wish to happen.
How do we do it?
Well,
That's the best way to do that.
that's the question, isn't it? Yeah.
Because there's a disconnect, isn't there, between there's a view that we've never been as connected to the world as right now, social media and the internet and things like that. But
And yet people complain of isolation and loneliness more now than they ever have.
And you can bump into someone head first, reading your phone while you're walking down the street, and you don't know your next door neighbour's first name or what football side they go for. And so, even though we're so connected, we're disconnected, and it's quite ironic.
Yeah. Well, I think that sort of goes back to that thing I was talking about before, where I'm very guilty of that occasionally, being just so sucked into the whole wider world that's available to me through this tiny little device that I forget to sort of just pay attention to my immediate surroundings. I'm hoping that that's something that we will learn to deal with as part of our evolution, as humans. We're in the sort of, I think, maybe the craziest phase of device addiction and use, moving through that, and then hopefully what will happen is that will recede over time, and we'll come to realise that it's not in our best interests to devote so much time and energy to artificial interaction,
Sarah Carroll Unplugged, perhaps.
I'm happy to unplug any old time. Unplug me, that's it, but that's what I sort of mean, is that, don't, you mustn't forget to just be in life, live in life, and here we are,
Enjoy the now.
we're blessed and lucky to be in such a great place and have each other, so, yeah.
Yeah. And how do you get that dialogue that's so necessary in community where, I guess in days gone past when it wasn't a supermarket on the top of the hill, it was probably a church or a farm, and people used to come together on a Sunday and have a chat, and phone numbers had 3 digits if you were lucky enough to have a phone, and you couldn't watch TV because you didn't have one, but people knew everything about people, and now we don't tend to know anything. But we're so well informed as community members. How do we come together and then express our opinions about stuff without feeling the urge to sell the idea to someone else or to impose our own views, but just to sit in that silence around, isn't that interesting, that diversity? How do you create that?
I think from my experience, a lot of people that I've come across in the Bellarine a lot don't work here. A lot do commute to Melbourne, and like you, interstate, and myself and my husband worked offshore. And the other thing is, I think people are very, very busy with their lives, and they have to want to create time to care about it enough to show up to a forum to talk or to get involved in something to talk. So yes, you do have a voice, you do have people that are passionate about it, but a lot of people might care about it but are not as passionate, and it doesn't impact their direct life. They've got other things to be concerned about for them at that time. So how you get people passionate about it, well, there's people doing that.
Isn't there also a problem that, you can be passionate and people will, in the community, talk about issues that matter to them?
Yeah.
The supermarket or the service station is a classic example. Everyone you will talk to opposes that. And yet as a community, even though we're expressing that view, it seems like these decisions are imposed upon us, and we're kind of left feeling powerless. Like, we want to protect this beautiful part of the world. It is, as Sarah says, and you identify also, Sarah Valentine, that this is an area that has value, the wineries, the agricultural, heartland, and yet it's been sort of seen as, a place for cheap housing. And, how do we actually protect that? Like, we can come together and discuss it, but it seems somehow they're the outside forces that sort of override the community concerns. I don't know if you've got any thoughts on how we...
Well, we were talking, Tom and I and a couple of other people got together the other night, and Tom was talking about the importance of or the what's the word? The communications that he's been having with politicians and people in council, and how he's learning to deal with those people in a non-adversarial and respectful yet persistent and knowledgeable way. So what I think is important for people to understand is that we can actually approach people in positions of power. They are obliged to listen to us, and they are obliged to take our concerns on board. So while you may not get everything you want from talking to somebody who's in charge of something that's been, an issue that you're concerned about, you will be better informed and at least know that you've had some input into the process if you do approach these people. And I think that that's something that a lot of us don't understand and feel like either it's somebody else's job or it's something that they don't know enough to, they're not sophisticated enough to attempt.
I think on what you said earlier, Sarah, was in regards to having an appreciation of listening to the other side. And I think that sometimes does lack in communities.
Yeah.
There's my opinion, and my opinion's right. No matter what anyone says, I'm going to protect my little part of the world and not actually go outside of that. And I'm not saying anything's right or wrong with any of the things we're talking about.
Feels risky.
But sometimes there can be such narrow-mindedness that there's not the view to go back and look at the bigger picture of perhaps why certain decisions are being made and for what reasons, factoring in everything that either council or government needs to factor in. you know, there's a lot of components, and I've never been in politics, I never will be, so I don't know all the components, but I can only imagine it's like a 10,000, you know, puzzle, try and put it together, and how you keep everybody happy is absolutely impossible in my view. So I think for people that are very dogmatic about certain issues, it would be great to see them step back and at least try and appreciate the other points, because otherwise it's like a bullet a gate.
Yeah, well, it's impossible to have progress when
It
there's
just
this
won't
going
happen.
on, so you have to learn to sort of...
And essentially no one's listening to anyone.
That's right.
They're just yelling and screaming almost, and it becomes white noise.
How do you break that? How do you break that nexus, Sarah and Carol? How do you break that nexus? You know, I asked the question, you know, there's
Well, like I said, I think going back and
there's a
for
politician
individuals
here
to
who-
go back and have
who feels
an
that-
appreciation for making an attempt to understand
Yeah.
how the puzzle needs to come together, that because one decision may impact me negatively, but it could actually be impacting 100 positively. So I have to be sacrificed
Yeah.
for the sake of the greater to some degree.
Mm.
But I might not know that if I don't take the time to see it in a different light.
But it also has to work vice versa.
It absolutely has to
They
work.
have to listen to the community and what the community is
I,
saying.
absolutely, it goes both ways, every way,
Mm.
the thousands of ways that everyone's opinion.
Do you think
Yeah.
people feel that they're never listened to?
Do I feel that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems
Oh,
that
it
way.
seems that there seems to be so many forums and committees, and nothing ever seems to happen.
Take it to the election then, don't you?
Yeah, it just, you know, so then I think most of the population, I'm probably guilty of it myself, is I just think, well, why bother? You know, you
Oh,
know,
there's definitely
yeah, you think I'm
complacency.
busy enough in my own life, why bother? Because it's a waste of breath.
So let's transition then to a bit of a view. So we've talked about the present and some of the challenges of that. We've talked about the past and your unique paths to that. I'm lucky enough to be blessed with three daughters. The youngest one's just about to finish BCE, and the other two are off doing their own thing. And you know, what have they got to look forward to in relation to life on the Bellarine or in the community that we're co-creating here, and about what's your view about if you could create a preferred future that you could then construct, what kind of things would you then bring to life where we live?
Any ideas?
It's only a small question.
That's yeah.
Well, my concern would be you don't want it to be like Geelong.
No.
You don't want it to be like everywhere else. And that concerns me, that it is becoming like everywhere else, and it's too special to ruin. But, you know, we want some green space. We want to keep some, I don't know, some open land, and just have somewhere they can play and go to the beach, and not, and have schools open. Like, we're really fortunate in Drysdale, we've got fabulous schools, but when you look at the other communities on the Bellarine, where so many people are just buying holiday homes and not actually becoming part of the community and having their children being raised there and use the shops there, and that's something I think we have to be concerned about too, that we don't just become a little weekender. Not Drysdale, but the coastal communities.
What about for you guys?
Well, I've got two children, one in high school, one in primary school. I'd love there to be enough opportunities for them to create a life here if they chose to. So there, in that way, then there I guess needs to be a level of growth, but I agree completely with Carol. As one of the reasons or the main reason we lived here was because of the space, the ocean and the space. So I have no knowledge on if farmers choose to sell their land, what government has in place or council to protect those acres as the farmers, you know, sell or move on or close. You know, can developers buy it and build? I don't know the answer to that, but it would be great if they couldn't do that across. You know, yeah, there's areas. I'm sort of in the middle. I live in Wellington, so depending on what day of the week, it will depend on what town I like to be part of. But I do a lot of shopping in Ocean Grove. My kids are at school here in Drysdale. I'm all over the place. And for those of you, I don't know if anyone's here from Ocean Grove, but you know, the Oakdean Estate and Kingston is just, it is a suburban crawl, there's no doubt. And I know there's plans for a school, I believe, and another shopping centre.
It's going to be huge, apparently.
Yeah,
behind,
and maybe that's great for the Bellarine, that Ocean Grove, that area, that Kingston area, is like the mini city, if you like, and the rest remains, you know, haddocks and green and wineries and so on. I don't know, but I'd certainly like to think that there is opportunity for my kids to buy without it going through the roof in prices, which it is in areas, and also work in this area or develop businesses in this area or whatever it might be.
And you spoke before about the seasonal nature of business here, and
For
in
certain
many
businesses,
certain
yeah.
businesses, yeah, and then you've got growth industries here, like HK is a massive growth industry on Geelong and the Bellarine.
Yeah.
But how do you then stimulate that growth in certain other industries that then creates employment and then creates opportunity to live, but maintains this green wedge space and the farmland
I
and
said there's a puzzle. It's got to, you've got to have all the pieces to try and put it together as one picture.
I think there
And I
needs
don't
to
know
be
who's
an-
got the answer.
well,
It needs sustainable growth.
yes, and I think the only way really is just for there to be a decision reached as far as possible by consensus on, you know, basically what the tone of the development should be like and what sorts of things are important to most of us. I guess if it's possible to ascertain that information, you know, do most of us feel that retaining as much green space as possible is important? If that's a tick, then that should be factored into every decision that's made, and it needs to be set, you know, there need to be guidelines and possibly policy and maybe even legislation written around that and agreed upon. I think it's really important that we remember that you can't eat buildings, so land needs to be always available to grow food, and water sources need to be protected. So those basic things need to be guarded, you know, really fiercely. And I think in terms of industry and growth, that if you're to take examples from elsewhere around the world, renewable energy appears to be a huge growth industry everywhere else but here. And so if we're going to be intelligent about it, we need to factor that in too, and channel people into that in all its, you know, forms, you know, construction, maintenance and sales, you know, right through the whole spectrum of it, you know. There are so many ways that can be developed around here without damaging land or water and without taking up unnecessary space, you know. So I think, yeah, we just need to insist that our leaders take our wishes regarding this area into account. If we can put forward, you know, key ideas about what we want to preserve about the place and what's important for the future generations, you know. So yes, there needs to be environmental and agricultural futures here, and there needs to be industrial futures and retail and all that sort of stuff, but yes, it all needs to be balanced, I think, so that I guess if we can decide on the essential character of the place, that's appears to be, from what most people say, the combination of open space, peace and quiet, beautiful landscapes and seascapes and that sort of stuff, and, you know, a welcoming, burgeoning, you know, busy population, you know.
healthy, flourishing. Well, I get the contrast between what you two just spoke about how it's important to have that issue, but then sometimes it just feels like no one's listening to you when you speak. How does that come together?
Well, it's representation. Effective representation has to occur, and if the representation that's occurring at this point is not effective, then we have to find people who can represent us effectively, and that's democracy, and we're allowed.
Should we
to do
go
that.
back to having our own council?
That's been spoken about by a few people lately, yeah, because people are saying that the Shire was much more effective.
Well, it understood the community.
Yes.
And the community was small back then.
It was representative
But
of the
it's-
community.
it is.
whereas the Greater Geelong doesn't look at Drysdale as a community. It's just over there, and they're busy with Geelong.
Can we secede?
And especially at the moment, seeing Geelong Council doesn't have a very good reputation. In fact, it's
No,
called,
they don't.
dysfunctional.
Yeah.
Part of the problem specifically for Drysdale is Drysdale is getting smaller and smaller, but the community is getting larger and larger, and it's being fragmented because people talk about Drysdale, Clifton Springs and Lewis, when in reality it's one community.
And broader still, the Bellarine is its own community.
And as far as the Geelong Council is concerned, the greater population is Geelong City. So that's their focus, obviously. Whereas the outlying areas such as Bellarine are perhaps not as important in their eyes as far as
And all that money and attention focused on the CBD.
yeah, and I really do take question of the articles in the paper about the Geelong Council specifically as being dysfunctional. I think that needs to stop, and it needs to stop immediately. So that the council represents the population of the area, not themselves.
So are you saying that you want the representation of them as dysfunctional to stop, or you want the dysfunctionality to stop?
I want the dysfunctionality to stop, of
Good,
course.
that's what I thought you meant. I just
It's
wanted to
very
make sure.
inefficient. It's not efficient at all.
No, not at all.
I'm wondering whether there's also
Counterproductive.
a leadership issue. It's, you know, that saying, without vision the people perish, that maybe there is a lot of murmuring, a lot of people talking, but maybe what would be helpful is some visionary leadership. Like, I'm hearing visionary leadership from you, Sarah Carroll.
I thought that
Oh,
too.
nice.
And
Well, I'm just saying, everybody's saying the same thing. There's a lot of people are saying the same thing.
yeah,
as me.
but you're listening and you're articulating and you've got a context and you get it. So I'm wondering whether maybe that we need to empower some visionary leadership and actually give them our support, and get people talking. But if there is no focal point, it's a bit like you with your Bellarine businesswomen. You were the focal point to start with. They didn't join Bellarine businesswomen. They actually joined Sarah Valentine, and you exercised some visionary leadership and said, hey, this is what we need, why don't we get together and do something together? And then you cast the vision and they caught it, you know. And it was obviously it met a need and they ran with you. And now it's bigger than you. Isn't that
Absolutely.
exciting?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's perhaps what we need to do. That it's not a place, it may well just be a person that we need to send us forward, and
Well,
we'll gather around you.
I think there's a lot of, I could be speaking well off rank here and completely wrong, but I think there's a lot of politicians or leaders in the country locally that are very concerned about the election, which is close, and don't go beyond that, and don't really have the bigger purpose and the bigger vision in mind. And if you look at it from a company point of view, from business, which is where my expertise lies, the most successful companies in the world start with the why, and they have a very clear vision, and they never deviate from that, and they're not afraid ever to be upfront about what they believe in. And you can liken it to whether it's Gandhi or Mandela. They had a vision, and people bought it, and they never ever wavered from it. And that, what I see, is the leaderships will waver to popularity as opposed to staying on purpose.
Yes.
And we don't even know what their purpose is because it changes so regularly.
Yeah.
And they don't know what their values are because they don't really articulate them themselves.
And if Carol saw somebody who was speaking her language and you felt heard by that
Yes.
person, you would support them, wouldn't you?
Yes.
And support the cause, and you'd rally. Yeah.
I've got a question here.
I just wondering what the process is. I've noticed not just in the new developments around Drysdale, Clifton Springs, but this is also happening in Point Lonsdale, which is in a different council. But the new developments seem to be designed by developers in fitting as many houses as possible in a little space. And so one of the things I've noticed very markedly is the roads are getting narrower and narrower. So when people park on the side, they go up onto the sidewalk. And unlike some places where I've been, when you've got an opportunity of a new development, you integrate as part of that plan cycleways and other things like that, so people aren't reliant on the car, or people can walk on the sidewalk without being afraid of being blocked by a car. And it does seem, I went a few years ago and lived overseas, and I was away for about 15 years, and when I came back, the area that I knew as rural was suddenly houses as much as you could fit in. And now they're having trouble with, they have to buy back houses. This was in northwestern Sydney, and they're having to buy back houses, and they're talking about putting a railway in on a new road, but they can't because they've filled all these houses, and there's a tremendous opportunity at the beginning. I went to university in Canberra, and people used to criticise Canberra because they would build a double dual carriageway road in the middle of a field, and they say, oh, what a waste of money. But you go back there 5 years' time, and you'll see that that's a planned suburban development, and I think that's a far more sensible way to go, and you have the opportunity to incorporate with a greenfield site something like separate cycle paths, so you don't have to compete with high-speed traffic on the roads, which people do if they ride a
That's what
bike.
I always feel with Drysdale, there's no planning. I don't know anything about town planning, but when you think the ring road is going to be single lane, why not think further down the track? Why not think about it now instead of later? It just seems a waste of money.
And even like we've got the rail trail, how can we actually make the rail trail really cool so that, you just don't think twice, I'll ride my bike into Geelong. I just like the idea of it, but I'll never do it. It is actually cool. Is it? Could do it.
I want to credit our forefathers with getting everything right. They did build the town on a 5-road intersection coming together. But there's another question at the back.
Me? Thank you. I just thought I'd better speak in defence of those politicians who never listen, because you've got one that's listening.
Hey!
I guess from my perspective is that we get quite a lot of mixed messages in what people want when they move to a new area, and I'd be interested to know the three of you basically come from Melbourne or other parts, and when families do move into an area, they do like the character retention. That's the reason they move there, for reasons that they enjoy, but invariably they also want public transport, so they want rail access very close. They want road access that's not congested and easy to move from one to the other. They want schools, they want a whole heap of amenities and infrastructure. So suddenly that character retention is going to be compromised by the need to have the infrastructure around that they're used to where they came from. So my question is that from a priority point of view, and I haven't heard much about it, is what do you see the Bellarine needs? And it might well need a new local government area specifically for Bellarine, get rid of the Borough of Queensborough to those, I think, 3,700 ratepayers, and focus Bellarine as a specific region as a local government area. But to my mind, it's the public transport issue which you haven't raised, given you've got young families. I'd be interested to know if that is inhibiting the growth of this region. Overcome it.
Can I jump up there? I was going to raise it earlier. I have been very vocal and very passionate about the public transport. I live in Port Arlington. Timetables have come in, and I've been to many forums, consultation forums, voice of views, because St Leonard's and Port Arlington are the poor cousins on the Bellarine, and I was told in public forum by a local member that it will improve during peak time, and it hasn't. If you live in Drysdale, it has. There's more buses. Port Arlington, to get to work before 9 o'clock, you get there either at 7 o'clock or 8:30. Then the next one gets you in at 9:45. So we workers are really stuffed. And I have been vocal, and as Carol had said, you kind of give up wanting to raise it, and you can probably hear it in my voice. I get very vocal and passionate, and I really do feel that no one cares. I got petitions going to get an extra service for the peak hour going to St Leonard's. We got one, and it stopped at Drysdale.
So can I capture that and that question and talk about that as surviving, that some stuff happens, and a catchphrase from your website is from surviving to thriving.
Yep.
And to link that question in, so for the community to thrive with all of its different stakeholders, if there was one thing that you could do, whether it's public transport or local representation or maintaining green space, there's a bunch of things to be passionate about, and the more local papers you read, the more things there is to be passionate about.
I think it'd be great
What
to
is
get
it?
the train. Imagine if we could get the train running. My father-in-law, he remembers catching the train down here. When
There's
he was
talk
young.
of it, I believe.
That'd be amazing.
Yeah.
How much would it have cost them to tarmac the rail trail behind the Curlew's golf course? But we could have got the train line going. Why do you need that tarmac?
Yeah.
You know,
So it's a different take on the public transport, the connections through
we've got the
around
Light
the
rail.
train. We've got the
Light
train
rail in the
there.
middle of the highway.
So a lot,
Or you
right?
could use the rail trail,
The rail
and you could still use a bike train
Yeah.
track beside it.
That's right. The train track's still there.
But how do people get there though? Because that's the other issue.
From
Like with the bus service, I know from travelling on it every day for 4 years, there are people on that bus who don't have a licence, can't drive, they're
Yes.
elderly.
Yes.
They rely on it to get in and out of Drysdale or to Geelong, whereas it seems the new timetables are focused on getting people to the Geelong station early to commute to Melbourne. But the average blogs on the our part of the Bellarine just want to get to Geelong to get to work or to the hospital.
Is there anywhere on the Peninsula now or in Drysdale area, I suppose, that you buy your Met card now?
You get them on the bus
You get
and
them on
get
the
them
bus
at the
now.
station.
Yeah, that was something I wrote to the
That was
minister
amazing,
about
wasn't
one
it?
time.
Yeah,
I just
that was a
thought
real
it was
issue.
so ridiculous that you couldn't,
You couldn't buy one anywhere.
Yeah.
So we've got a train, a light rail,
That'd be fun.
with spider connections at the end
Yep.
for different
Maybe there need
entry
to be
times.
smaller buses from
Yeah,
those
Because they're nearly always
Yep.
empty, aren't
Yeah.
they?
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
about Uber carpooling?
Yes.
Have we got an Uber community going here?
I don't think there's one in this area, but I'm sure it would be easy to start it. But look, I'm into that idea of little buses. I've been thinking about that a lot because
Yes,
there are, that can do, off sort of highway and
Feeder to the.
yeah,
hub.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd be totally happy to drive one of those.
Yeah,
I'd
me
really, be
Took
into
our
doing
license
that.
together.
Yeah. Well, a small bus, no, you can just drive it as a van.
Not
Yeah,
special.
you don't have to even go light rigid or anything.
Awesome.
It'd be the best. Yeah, so that's, I think, we have to have, like, I can just see, you talk about the estates and how all the streets are little and squidgy and everything. Wouldn't it be great if everybody could just put their vehicles in the garages, during the week and just get them out on the weekends and just get them all just off the road altogether and just have a whole fleet of little buses driving around the area
As
picking
long as they're
people
not
up.
parked up onto the walkway.
Yeah. But I worry about emergency vehicles getting through into there. Like I do this thing, L2P, it's a driving mentor program. The City of Greater Geelong runs it. It's one of their excellent programs, and it's to teach learners who haven't got parents not living at home or whatever they take. Anyway, I was driving a kid through, or he was driving me through one of those estates the other day, and we were sort of like weaving in between, not all the streets, some of them were a bit wider, but I thought, God, what if an ambulance or something needed or a fire engine needed to get through here?
Or a truck.
There's big vehicles parked on either side of the street.
It's probably no different to driving through Port Melbourne.
Sure.
South Melbourne,
Yeah,
it's
I
been there
guess.
forever.
Yeah, I guess
I
so.
think
What a
it's-
wasted opportunity.
Yeah.
though.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know there's little narrow city streets too, but yeah, I would have thought they'd have thought about that.
Yeah, because those narrow cities.
So that's high for you?
Full of cars.
Yeah.
What about for you?
Yeah,
Buses.
I honestly can't comment on
Trains.
public transport. I should admit that. I do drive almost everywhere. My kids get a bus that's run by the school, which is brilliant. So but I've heard transport is a challenge, but I can't comment it personally. I would like, it's hard, I was thinking before, I'm from Melbourne and we chose to live here because of the character, because of the charm, because it's outside of Melbourne, outside of the traffic. I go to Melbourne as you do, and the traffic we left there in 2007 to go to Darwin, and now, 2015, the traffic is 10 times worse, if not more, and you can really notice when you haven't been there. So we certainly moved here for that environment, but probably everybody moving in here to the new estates is moving here for that reason, but is actually creating what they've come for. So it's kind of a bit of an ironic situation. I would like to see the green spaces maintained that perhaps is currently farmland, that when that is no longer farmland, what does it become? And I'd like to see it stay as some kind of that green. There's nothing better than being in the city through the day. I drive down the Port Arlington Road and, just past Leopold, it starts to get green, you see the water, and you just sort of take a breath and you go, oh, I'm out of that hustle, which I love, the hustle, but I love this more. So I think the maintenance of that character.
There's a very, can I just, I'm interested. Sarah, there's a very interesting example over in Adelaide, over at McLaren Vale in the Barossa Valley, where they're designated rural only. It's actually not just designated, but
I know the area, yep.
Yeah. McLaren Vale, they've said this is rural only within this boundary. And they've been bold enough to do it, but it's been driven by the community. It's driven on heritage values, cultural values,
and I'm not
social
familiar with
values.
the zoning there here.
Sarah, it's about I think we've got to ask ourselves the question: who were we? Who are we? And what's the other one? Who will we be? Who were we? Who are we? And who will we be? And I think until we can really nail it, I think we're going to just vacillate. We'll go everywhere. Who were we? Who are we? And who will we be? They've done it in Adelaide, and I've got mates that live over there and they'll love it. They'll love it. Barossa Valley, it's preserved what's that line from, what do they call it? The castle. The serenity. It preserved the serenity.
And those places are so important for our well-being and mental health. To know that they exist is so important, and I think it is possible to have a balance, and I just think that we need to aim for that, and we need to not compromise on it.
The trouble is we haven't got a plan for who we want to be. And like we say, the police is probably a small council, and perhaps the Bellarine has come of age where we should be our own entity. Otherwise we are going to lose our on-screen process.
I'm going to take a last question from the back, because we're nearly out of time.
Last this gentleman, you mentioned that another council. Is that possible? Like, is it a possibility to join Queensland and make the Bellarine council?
Anything's possible.
What's the percentage that might start that ball rolling?
Well, it's already been discussed. If you remember, the City of Greater Geelong, in fact the Borough of Queensbridge wanted to move the municipal boundaries further than the City of Greater Geelong sees it consuming the Borough of Queensbridge. So that's being agitated through the Minister's office. But I think if there's a will, there's a way. If the community of Bellarine truly believe they want their own identity in a local government area, then there's mechanisms that can take place to at least start that discussion. It hasn't been a discussion that I've heard a lot of, but it's come through with groups like this. And to me it makes sense, because the beauty and the assets of the Bellarine is quite different, and the aspirations for those that live there are very different to the City of Greater Geelong. And Armstrong Creek's a classic. I guess I feel extremely lucky living in Barwon Heads where the boundaries are tight. And any move to move those boundaries I will fight tooth and nail for, because that is the character of Barwon Heads.
But that's a great example of a community coming together to fight for that too, wasn't it? Because
but we will be under pressure, because it's farmland on between Armstrong Creek and Barwon Heads, and really there's only 2 or 3 significant owners that we pressured to develop and subdivide that land. So it's going to take the will of the council to protect that green space that you're talking about, that we regard so highly in Barwon Heads that you do here. And that's why being so far removed from the planning and the representation of the City of Greater Geelong, you're going to have more trouble trying to preserve your inheritance, so to speak, in relation to character, without having your own local government area.
Drysdale Clifton Springs Community Association has established a nice relationship with Joshua Trowell at the City of Greater Geelong, who's a young planner there, and I would like to think that if anybody in the community wanted to ask him what's kind of coming up, or if you wanted to identify, and if you knew about some land, for instance, that you were interested in preserving or inquiring about, at least you could probably contact him at council. that's an example of what I was talking about before with not being afraid to approach people at council. You could actually phone or email him and just say, you know, I'm a resident, I'm interested, what's going on? And then, you know, take steps to perhaps, you know, gather a group of people who felt similarly and have a say about what was going to happen to that land. That sort of hasn't happened. That proactive thing hasn't happened here, so.
So you're suggesting that we can find out what planning applications are active right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And they're perfectly happy to tell you, you know, he's Joshua in particular has been very forthcoming. You know, we've given him absolute buggery, you know, and he's been really respectful and polite and forthcoming. So, yeah.
One last one.
Oh, it's just a question. I'm just wondering, how do we measure the success of the Queenscliff Council when we're talking about we want to join with a council like the Queenscliff Council? Because on my most recent visit to the Queenscliff Council, I see Queenscliff is taking a big step backwards. Look at the number of empty shops in the main street, and picking up their local newspaper, they're very negative about the council. So, I mean, I think we've got a very idealistic view of small councils. And we talk very negatively of Geelong. I've lived on the Bellarine Peninsula for nearly 60 years. I love Geelong. The Bellarine Peninsula means different things to different people. It doesn't mean wineries to me. When I grew up, there were no wineries on the Bellarine Peninsula. So it means different things: wide open spaces, birds, trees, the lake lawn, beaches. I got married on the Dell.
Oh.
I have every Christmas of my kids' childhood in the Dell. You know, and I treasure those places, but it means different things to different people, and I love Geelong.
Yeah. It's finding out what we've all got in common, I think, that matters, you know, and I think we can all agree that the spaces and that the beach and that, you know, those places and those aspects are really important to us all. So, yeah, it may not be the same cultural markers, might not be important to everybody in the same recreational pursuits, you know, but we've all got, you know, it seems that most of us have similar reasons for wanting to be here. So this is why I think, you know, it shouldn't be that difficult to kind of protect those
What a
aspects.
wonderful reflection, you know, the rearview mirror as we're driving towards the future about, just to remember, things here have been pretty good as well. In wrapping up, closing comment, Sarah Curran?
Just don't be afraid to ask, I guess. Don't be afraid to talk to other people about it, you know, no matter who. Don't be afraid to write a letter or make a phone call and just find out what's going on. That's what I would say. Yeah.
Sarah Valentine?
Totally agree, and also take the time, as you said earlier, to get an appreciation for the different views and make an attempt to see the bigger picture.
And Carol McCarthy?
Probably just be part of the community, enjoy the community, enjoy the now. Like you were saying, stop looking at the outside influences, just enjoy what we've got while we've got it. We don't know how long we have it for.
Nice. Well, it's been a wonderful opportunity just to pause in our daily lives and just to have a bit of a think and a chat and to hear from three great women about some of the things that are important to them and about how they're creating community in the daily pursuit of their lives. Can you please thank our guests and thank So refreshments will be served out in the foyer, Tom. Very light refreshments and an opportunity to speak to our guests as well out there as well. So many thanks.
Greg,
Thank
Greg,
you.
just before you close, those of you who don't know Greg, I think you should take the opportunity. The guy is a great cook. Does anyone know where he cooks?
At his
The
house?
Berry Farm, the Tuckerberry. You know the Tuckerberry Cafe? That's where he is, not on a Saturday though. But
Not on a
a
Saturday.
very good cook. And Greg, you know, on our behalf,
Yeah.
thanks for doing what you're doing.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm just wondering whether we can get these little things going in amongst our neighbours and our friends, and, you know, get your neighbours over for a coffee and have a chat about what do you think about the Bellarine, and use the Hub Bellarine Facebook page if you use it. to put comments. We've been chatting to our neighbours and we reckon the Bellarine needs this, or this is what's great about it, and actually get a bit of a hum, a bit of a murmuring going, and start some rumours that there's something happening on the Bellarine. We can start that rumour campaign.
Yeah, plenty happening.
Terrific. Thank you.
Everyone.
Cheers. Thanks. Thanks, Sarah.